The American Library Association, you might think, would be just about the last group to waver on freedom of speech. Librarians, after all, are usually among the first to fight attempts to ban books or unpopular ideas. They, of all people, are most likely to point you to Voltaire's quotation, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." But recently, almost half of the 35,000-member group did an about-face. The subject was not the banning of a controversial book or pamphlet, but the release of a film sponsored by the Library Association itself that a lot of members thought was too hot to handle. Why the fight over a film? Well, you see, freedom of speech is an easy subject to agree upon in the abstract, but when it's applied to a specific, it can confuse and arouse even the most rational people. To understand what happened in this case, begin by recalling the controversy generated by Dr. William Shockley. Shockley is a physicist who has tried to present what he calls scientific evidence that blacks are genetically inferior to whites in intelligence.
I believe that there is, in effect, a very unhappy illusion about the biological nature of man. And this is...
On one college campus after another, there were demonstrations when he tried to speak. And in some places, where these films were taken 4 years ago, he was not allowed to speak.
I don't see why a university should give time to someone who has such obviously racial prejudices.
You're at a university where you're supposed to be willing to discuss all ideas, aren't you?
Sure, but they talk about the principle of academic freedom and free speech. And those principles mean nothing if they're not intelligently applied.
So in other words, you seem to have rights which you don't want to give him.
Cipher, a trans man who has decided that they are the reincarnation of
Prince Self, Bunny Self, and Blood Self.
Wake up! Wake up!
If you're a whole mother...
No, 50-50, man.
Or off! You!
Hey guys, it's Misha and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be taking a look at some of the loveliest people on this planet, and that is of course the woke social justice warriors on TikTok, because you can always count on them to keep their cool and present their arguments in a clear and concise manner. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the TikToks.
So I finally understood why my algorithm was this morning. I was confused because I was only seeing straight white boys being racist on my For You page. I was reporting every videos that I was getting on my For You page, which never happened. I saw 1 minute straight of blackface. There's a crazy ignorant person on my comment section, and I'm not showing their name because I don't want to spread hate. What the they are calling me a fascist, and TikTok probably believed them.
I want to show you a magic trick. Ready? Just turn off your phone. Go outside, and then come back and talk to us about it if it's that serious, but not like this. Don't scream at us, because no one's going to take you seriously this way. Oh, okay, but when straight men or straight women don't want to date a trans person, then it's transphobic. But they can have a preference, right? Okay, so double standards.
You to say was disrespectful. You're assuming. Really? Assuming. Really? You telling me you're a lady and you sitting here coming up on...
Looks like she wants to be the last airbender.
If you're a whole mother...
No, 50-50, man.
Or off! You! I don't know what whole means.
This psychotic behavior is genuinely concerning.
I'm terrified. Listen to me, Republicans, listen. You are the people in history they warned us about. They warned us about people like you. Wake up! Wake up! You have your own kids. Treat them like trash.
Is it because he's buying the diapers? Why are they always yelling? And this is over diapers. Imagine if there's a war. These would be the type of people that would murder others just to get like the last cupcake.
I don't understand what is so hard about correcting other people when they misgender others.
The narcissism. We all have our own lives. We don't have to go around and correct people when they refuse to go along with your delusion.
It takes you like 2 seconds, but you know what it takes for me to have to constantly do that? A lot of unnecessary emotional labor that I already have to take on a daily basis just to exist and be who I am.
See, it's not even enough now to respect their pronouns, right? We aren't an ally if we're not telling other people to use whatever pronouns this person wants. And spoiler alert, it will never be enough.
I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors. So help me God. I shall keep secret all matters committed and revealed to me in this capacity, or that shall be secretly treated of in council. I, Justin P.J. Trudeau, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Prime Minister. So help me God.
The Prime Minister will now sign the oath books, followed by the Governor-General and the Clerk of the Privy Council and Secretary to the Cabinet, who will sign the oath books to formally witness the swearing-in of the Prime Minister.
To begin, I would like to thank the former Governor-General David Johnston for having quickly submitted his report on foreign interference. He began his independent review in March to examine the scope and effect of foreign interference on Canadian elections and to make recommendations so that Canada can better protect its democracy. The mandate included recommendations on the processes so that Canada can effectively fight foreign interference and so that Canadians can have confidence in their democratic systems. We welcome today's report and its recommendations.
Canadians have had many questions over the last few months, and that is why we launched this process. The former Governor-General has reviewed thousands of pages of classified and unclassified documents. While preparing his report, Mr. Johnston was given complete access to any relevant records and documents from across government. The work has led him to conclude that, and I quote, "The elections of 2019 and 2021 were well protected by sophisticated mechanisms, and there is no basis to lack confidence in their results." Obviously, Canada is concerned about some of the positionings that Italy is taking in terms of the LGBT rights, but I look forward to talking with you about that because we're here at the G7 as an assembly of countries that are promoting the kinds of strong values and democratic principles that the world needs, and I always look forward to those conversations with you.
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
Well, welcome to this talk, and we're delighted to welcome back Professor Norman Fenton. Norman, thank you for joining us again. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And today we want to talk about this data from Canada, I believe, Norman, the excess deaths in Canada, which we did mention on a video a few days ago, and you were kind enough to give some expert advice on.
Yeah.
So if we have a look at this graphic now, perhaps you can tell us what it's basically about. So what are we looking at here, Norman? This is the Canadian excess deaths data for Canada for 2022.
Yeah, so in fact, this is from the official an official Canadian website. I need to say something more about the limitations of the data that's on that website, but we'll take this at face value. The thing is here, what exactly do we mean by excess deaths? A lot of people have a kind of like a not terribly clear understanding of what that is, because it's actually really complex to know to actually measure what excess deaths really are, because you have to know what constitutes the normal range of deaths in any given period that you're looking at. So here they're plotting, this is supposed to be plotting excess deaths in each week of 2022. But how do we know what the normal expected deaths are? Now, typically, the normal range, or the baseline, as they sometimes call it.
This is the lower blue line, the light blue line, Norman, is it?
Yeah, so that will be determined by looking at, let's say, a number of the most recent previous normal years. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 10. So you'll have those, so for each week, you'll have, let's say, 5 or 10 years of previous, of the number of deaths in that particular week, because obviously you've got seasonal changes. And what they'll then do is they'll use some statistical methods, not only to do things like adjust for population changes over the years, but also to come up with a range, a so-called, they usually use a 95% confidence interval range, because instead of giving a single value, they'll give a range. Now here, interestingly enough, they've only given the, so there's a 95% confidence interval, which in lay terms, although this is not strictly true, this will be the range between which we're 95%, let's say, confident that the normal figure should appear within that range.
And that's the red dotted line, Norman, is it?
So the red dotted line here is the upper 90, so that's the upper 95% percentile. What they don't show here is the lower percentile, right?
But Canada supply and support us in supplying many military equipment and ammunition together with other allies and our partners. The second issue was sanction support. So the next packages of sanctions on the personalities, Russian persons, and their industries. And in details I explain and describe why should we implement sanctions on nuclear sphere of Russia and nuclear industry because of their nuclear blackmailing all of the world and European continent. We also discuss other steps about confiscation of frozen Russian assets, and Canada here is again #1 in sense of creating of precedents for confiscation of frozen assets of Russian oligarchs. So all of these issues are crucially important for Ukraine now and during these tough times for Ukraine.
Well, we know that we will continue to work with our partners throughout the world to defend Ukraine, to ensure that Ukraine can stand strong against Russia, and that Russia does not manage to realign the global order in its favor, nor determine the future of the Ukrainian people. That's why we'll be there for them.
My name is Yuri Klufas. I'm reporting for Kontakt, Ukrainian TV network. It's great to see both countries on the same stage. After all, we have the same great neighbor. Ukraine is experiencing an invasion and a war. Most Canadians may not know it, but we're having a similar invasion in the North Pole, which we'll learn about very soon. Both of you have mentioned democracy, democratic values, and the greatest threat, it seems, war or no war, to the world of democracy is Soviet disinformation and or Russian disinformation and hacking. Soviet, because everything continues on in the same way. The question to Prime Minister Shmyhal, what is Ukraine doing in terms of countering this Russian disinformation? And to Prime Minister Trudeau, maybe on a lighter note, your website has been down today. Is that due to Russian hacking?
So thank you for your question. I should emphasize that Ukraine for the last 9 years in war with Russia, and 9 years in war with Russia, and 9 years in war with Russia, and 9 years in war with Russia, and